It's a sure thing. Change, change. Expect a miracle change. Watch me change when you change the way you look at things. The things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Now do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 change. Do 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 do.
Good afternoon and welcome to Spirit Cafe Show. I'm Barbara Jean and my co-host, the beloved Cheryl, is not with us today. She is preparing for her wonderful son's wedding this weekend. So we'll just send her lots of love and have her back very soon. Well, I'm so delighted to be back here with you today, and I want to begin with the land acknowledgement. We work, live, and play on the historical and traditional territory of many First Nations. And as we gather on Turtle Island, we as settlers are grateful for the opportunity to meet here. And we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We include the Métis, the Inuit, and all Indigenous peoples. Also acknowledging that as we continue to grow and expand on these lands, there is still unresolved and dangerous inequality and discrimination toward our BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ plus family. And by making these acknowledgements, we strive to be allies and take an active part in reconciliation. We recognize our oneness, we realize our history, and we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Well, I am excited to discover my guest today, the Reverend Brenda Peters. She's a senior minister of Unity of Omaha in Nebraska, and she has a passion for transforming lives, being of service to others, and continuous learning. And in her search for her spiritual path and her faith, she found unity. Welcome, Reverend Brenda.
Thank you very much.
I'm so grateful to have you here today and to talk about how to have courageous conversations.
Yes.
Oh, so let's start there. What do you think the most important element is in beginning that process?
I think the most important element is first a willingness. Because if you're not willing to even start having a conversation or looking into, gee, how do I feel about having this conversation? Then, there's no chance of moving forward with it. And then after that, of course, I think vulnerability and authenticity go hand in hand with all three of those. So.
Yeah, I think vulnerability is really a big one, especially when we look at, our world today and the racial tensions and things like that. If we're going to have conversations with someone who is raised in a different culture than us, there can sometimes be a little bit of trepidation about what can I say, what can't I say. So where do we go with that, do you think?
Go with starting a conversation?
Yeah, maybe you're looking at the news today and you see, there's been yet again another murder of a Black man, by police or whatever. And how do we bridge that conversation as white women?
Yeah, that's a great question. First you have to find somebody who is willing, again, to have that conversation with you. Yeah. And then, I always like to start off courageous conversations or difficult conversations or challenging conversations with, look, I don't know what I don't know. And I'm totally aware that I don't know a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a great place to start.
Yeah.
Honesty, right?
Mhm. Yep,
Honesty.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
then that kind of breaks down the, like, I am not an expert. So please don't look at me like that. And I'm also learning and trying to grow and coming to you and having this conversation. I'm looking to you to be my teacher. So can you please help me through, navigate whatever it is, language or an understanding of, what's happening or how you feel about it or what your culture says around this,
Mhm.
and then try to go forth from there. But I do believe that setting that foundation of, I have no idea and I'm just trying to learn. So are
And
you
that's
willing to teach?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great place. I think we have to be careful with expecting them to teach us though, because a lot of times they go, go educate yourself. It's like, and fortunately, like what I like to say to people sometimes, because I was the minister in two different Black churches for the better part of 12 years. And from the podium, stepped in it a couple times, probably more than a couple times, but a couple times where it was brought to my attention. And when somebody said to me, "Well, you said this, do you really think that was appropriate?" And I, went, "No, it wasn't appropriate." And from there, we were able to have a conversation
Mhm.
because I acknowledged that they were right. And I didn't have to feel bad about it. I mean, they know that I was raised by a white family in a white city. And, it's like that's my knowledge. That's what I know. And so I am learning. But what I did do is take it upon myself to do a lot of reading, a lot of studying. And I think that's part of the process as well, is to read as much as possible so that when somebody's talking to you about, well, I'm sorry, you can't say you're the black sheep of the family in front of a black congregation. Like that's a
Mhm.
definite no. And that's what I did. Of course, as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was wanting to pull it back, but
Right.
it's I knew it was wrong right off the top. And so when somebody came to me and said, "Do you really think that was appropriate?" It was really simple to go, "Absolutely not." And
Mhm.
then they were able to talk about their feelings and what was going on for them. So there's so many ways to broach it. And I love what you said about I don't know what I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think you hit on another really good point of for what we need to do as far as the people coming to start the conversations is to not feel guilty
Yes, yeah.
because when at least in my experience, I know when I come in a conversation with guilt and shame, then I'm just trying to defend myself always.
And
And
defense is offense.
yep. And that's not at all a courageous conversation. That's just me defending myself. So,
That's me in my little victim puddle trying to escape from it, and I'm drowning.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I find that, there's so many conversations that are difficult. Death and dying again, it's people have a lot of trouble with that. The other thing is, when somebody gets really ill and it's a terminal illness, what do you say? How do you talk to them? I think all of these things, a woman who's just had a miscarriage, there's so much misunderstanding around that, and so many things that people say in those moments that are hurtful, that are
Mhm.
not intended that way. But again, we don't know what we don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, to a certain extent, I think that, if you're in a situation where somebody has said something to you that is offensive, it is important, like that person who came up to you, it is
Yeah,
important to point that out. Um,
absolutely.
but however, point that out in a way that's non-judgmental and, not defending and not crucifying that person, because you
Yeah.
have no idea where they're coming from.
I think that's part of the whole journey of creating a more peaceful world is to realize that the person in front of you hasn't set out to attack you.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming from their own consciousness. And if you can receive it that way, then you can turn to them and go, I'm sorry, that was really inappropriate. And here's why I feel that way, rather than you made me feel.
Right.
That attack mode that really doesn't serve anybody. But I think, kind of accepting people where they're at and a willingness to understand where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Not to necessarily accept bad behavior or whatever, but to go, oh, okay, this is where you're coming from. All right, let me tell you where I'm coming from, right? Like that's part of it. So
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about death?
Yeah.
Suicide, murder, baby dies. How do we approach those conversations in a way that is more healing than destructive?
Mm-hmm. And I think, again, to start off with, letting them know how you feel,
Mm-hmm.
and that you're there to support them. And
Yeah.
when there's a death, or and honestly any kind of death,
Yeah.
I try to say as little as possible.
Good answer.
Because I just want to be there for them, and let them talk and lead the way. I don't have any idea what they're going through and what's happening in their minds. And I'm not about to step into that and pretend like I do, or pretend I know why it happened.
That's the other one, right?
Mhm.
People, it's so interesting how we like to fill the air.
Mhm. Yeah, because we're uncomfortable.
We're uncomfortable with silence. We're uncomfortable with what's going on. And so we're trying to figure out what to say. And in doing that, we've actually stepped in the middle of that big puddle and we're drowning, because the last thing they need is for us to tell them stuff. They need
Mhm.
somebody to listen.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's, in fact, one of my talks just recently. I said, get used to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, because the more that you can do that, the
Yeah,
better off you are in every
absolutely.
situation, and especially in courageous conversations. If I'm okay being uncomfortable, and I'm not coming from that space of defenseness,
Yeah.
or guilt or shame or any of that. I'm just
Fear.
uncomfortable. And I can verbalize that even to that person. Look, I'm uncomfortable and I don't know what that's about right now.
And the thing is, they're probably uncomfortable too.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's how do we broach these conversations in a way that is respectful and compassionate? And
Right.
it starts by being compassionate and respectful with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we can share that with the person that's in front of us. So, yeah, I agree completely. Just speak the truth and do it quickly.
Right.
I think
Yes.
that's sort of the key to most things. Just, and show up as yourself. I think
Yes.
we've forgotten who we really are. And if we go back to those first 2 or 3 years of life, that's the real us. That's
Mm-hmm.
the us that was, sort of free and open and still, truly tied to our essence,
Mm-hmm.
before we got all these messages of, we did this wrong or that wrong. And then we started to sidle our way away from the true divinity within us. And it changes the game in a really big way.
It does. And if you're able, like in the example of a death, if
Mhm,
you're comfortable and they allow it also,
mhm.
just holding their hand and looking in their eyes,
Yeah.
or giving them a hug,
Yeah.
is that goes a long way, more than any words could ever.
Yeah.
So when you're able to do things like that, then they really get that sense of comfort and support from you. um
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's And I know when I first became a minister, I think, when I first started my training, a little bit of information is actually a bad thing. Because I think for myself anyway, I started off going, oh, wow, I can use prayer to change this and do that and do the other. And that really, that sort of sets you up to be kind of the judge and jury and the executioner for people rather than being a container, a sacred container that holds space for
Mm-hmm.
whatever people are going through.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's where we need to get to, not just as ministers, but I think as human beings, that when we can be willing to be with somebody in their pain as well as in their joy, that's when we are the strongest. That's when we can really have a positive impact and begin to create the world we say we want, which is a world that is more peaceful and loving and compassionate and kind, etc.
Right. Yeah. And, with a lot of these conversations, at least one of the person is in pain.
Yeah.
So to remember that you are now speaking to somebody who is in pain in one way or another, and it might not even be, if you like your instinct, your example of what at church,
Yeah.
it might not be that person was in pain at that moment, but that's years of history that has pain wrapped in it. So
Absolutely.
there's an underlying pain there. So I think that's another thing to recognize, that they are in pain on one level or another. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the books I read years ago that I really love for any type of conflict is when you come into a conflict, there's only two ways it can be addressed. One is a need to be right, and the other is a need to understand. And if I can come to every conversation with a desire to understand another human being, that's when I'm open. That's when I'm teachable. That's when I can be vulnerable. And that's when I can create a space for somebody else to acknowledge their own pain or discomfort and come to terms with it as well. Like they're able to, be with you because they don't feel threatened,
mm-hmm,
judged. They don't have to be different. Who
mm-hmm.
they are is fine. It's perfect, actually. So that also sort of changes how we how we do what we do.
Yeah.
I think the role of ministers to make people uncomfortable.
I've never agreed with that statement. I just can't. I don't know. I'm still a work in progress with that statement. There's something in me like, I don't know. That's
If I disrupt your comfort a little bit, maybe you'll open up. If I interrupt your paradigm slightly, maybe you'll begin to see how remarkable you are. Um,
maybe.
Yeah, so that's how I see it, is I'm disrupting the status quo, and
Yes.
in disrupting the status quo, I'm hoping you'll see your perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I see it, as creating some discomfort. Because when we're growing, often we're a little uncomfortable because it's new, a new frontier. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean it's bad, but
Right.
it's new, right? We don't
And
like change.
in that context, I can get on board with you about that. Yes.
There we go. We have a winner.
But there's others who are like, no, you can't. No.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But looking at it that way, like how do we create that growing edge? I think, and I think that's what courageous conversations do, is
Mm-hmm.
they help us to reassess the conversation. Like, am I really right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there something for me to learn here?
And I just did a quote because I spoke about words, but also not just about words, about listening. And there was a quote, and I cannot remember who it's from right now, but it said, listen to understand rather than to respond.
Yes.
So if, I can come from that all the time, like I'm not, I'm not thinking in my head how I'm going to respond to you. but I'm
Yeah.
actually there and present in that moment. And I think that's where sometimes the vulnerability comes in, because sometimes we don't want to hear what they have to say just because of our own feelings. Like,
It's true.
ooh, I have to feel. Yuck. I don't want to do
I
that.
remember my first year of ministry, in fact, probably my first 6 months. And I had a member of my board lose it with me um, over something that really didn't make sense. It was just about writing my paycheck, actually. And they were like, "Oh, we can't do," and I went, "Well, we can because money's there, and the agreement's been made. The contract is signed, and so you
Mhm.
need to pay me." And anyway, he was really upset about that. And what's interesting is then I had a couple of other board members who were like, "Who do you think you are?" And kind of carrying on, yelling at me. And I'm like, "Oh man, what did I sign up for?" And I went to a weekend conference with some senior ministers. And I was talking to one of them going, "Oh my gosh, like, what do I do?" And he looked at me and he goes, "Nothing." He says, "It's got nothing to do with you. They're going through their stuff. They're like, it's got nothing to do with you. You don't defend. Don't don't sit back and go, well, I did a bit. No, don't even go there." And so I go back at the next board meeting. My president and treasurer both resigned because they were mad at me. And when they were starting to say, "Oh, Rev B did this or that or the other thing," the secretary said, "Excuse me, that's not on the agenda. And if you have a problem with the minister, then you need to take it up with her in your own time, in your own place, because that's not board business." And in that moment, they both resigned and left. 6 months later, one of them came back going, "I am so sorry. This
Mm.
had nothing to do with you." And I'm like,
Yeah.
but it's interesting how we will react when somebody sort of attacks or accuses or whatever, how, especially in the beginning of ministry, where we can feel like, whoa, did I do something wrong? Did I overstep? Are they right? There can be those insecurities. I'm glad I'm not there anymore.
Mm.
The most important thing I learned from that was every time somebody brought me a problem, I would listen, and anytime there was a pause, I'd go, "Tell me more about that.
Mhm.
Always tell me more about that." Or I would repeat back and go, "I think I heard you say," and just to make sure we were on the same page and they were feeling heard. Because 9 times out of 10, that's all he needed, was to
Right.
know that somebody was listening.
Right. Absolutely. And another favorite quote of mine is Richard Rohr's, where he says, nothing to defend and nothing to prove.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah. Right. So when I bring that to mind, when
yeah.
someone, um, wants to have a conversation, but it's very animated,
Yes.
that always comes to mind. Like, okay, I have nothing to defend and nothing to prove. So that again puts me in that space of, okay, I'm just listening to you. And there have been a lot of times where I won't say anything. I
Mhm.
won't say anything. Even when they ask me a question, I'll just look at them.
Yeah,
And it's very interesting people's reaction to that.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, well, they wanna fill the space, or they want to be right, or whatever's going on. It sort of depends on the dynamic at the moment, but I think, it's just acknowledging that this person needs this space to vent,
mm-hmm.
and I feel like I'm a perfect space for that.
Yes.
You can come and vent to me about anything,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not gonna take it personally, and
Right.
I'm not gonna be mad at you about it. I'm gonna just hold space for you to be able to talk through whatever it is you're feeling, because your feelings are valid,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what happens when we defend. We have discounted their
Right.
feelings, and that's why it doesn't work.
Yes.
"You're wrong, I'm right." Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Who wants to talk to someone like that? I mean,
Nobody.
right,
Nobody.
exactly. And that
Yeah,
shuts the door for a conversation that could be very altering, who
very.
knows?
Yeah, very much so. I think, no, I don't know much about Nebraska, but I look at some of the things going on in the US these days, and I'm a little bit, disturbed by some of it. And then I have to go back to, what is mine to do? And how are you feeling about the political climate or some of the laws that have been, added into some of the states? And what is your experience of having, some of the changes done to women's rights or whatever? Do you have a feeling about that or a comment about that, or how do you process that?
I mean, I'm always for human rights, period.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting it's a very interesting time in history right now in the world, and has been for the last, I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
But I what I try to do is, can I go to Washington and change things, or can I, I'm one person and I cannot go fly here and there every time something happens and then say, "Hey, look, I don't think this is right." Or,
Exactly.
"This makes me feel, this big," or, "Do you realize what you've just now done?" And so, because there's one part of me that would love to do that. But the
Yeah.
reality of it is, the only thing I can change is me
Yes.
and my reactions to everything. And
Yes.
so that's where I start here. My world starts here with me, and my growth and my internal processes and my emotional maturity, and all of that makes up me and
Yeah.
myself, and learning and growing and making sure that I keep doing that, because
Yeah.
that then will go out into, the community, my community,
Yeah.
Unity of Omaha, Omaha, then the world, and so if I can start here, then I know the next right thing will happen.
Yeah.
And that's all I can do right now. I know there are a lot of people, a lot of ministers who are, activists, and I good for them. Um, I I just for me, it's starting here. And then
Yeah.
what can I do? Like you said, what is mine to do? You know,
Yeah.
and then take a look at that, and it might be something very simple, like
Mhm.
we have what we it's called Tri Faith,
Mhm.
and it's a campus here in Omaha that there is a Islam temple, a Jewish temple, and then also a Christian church. All
Mhm.
three are on the same campus. And
Nice.
so it's called Tri-Faith. And then there's a Tri-Faith nonprofit organization, and they just recently had United We Walk, for
Mm.
inclusivity. And so I was a part of that, because,
Nice.
again, that's something that I can do and say, we're here, and this is what we believe in. And we also, I also participate in Pride. We participated Unity of Omaha in Pride, and
Yeah.
again, to show people that we're a safe space. um,
Mhm.
those are the things that I can do that can make a big difference.
Yeah.
And you never know how big of a difference it makes until someone tells you the story. Oh,
Yeah.
I saw you, and then I came to your church, and then, you know what I mean? And maybe they go on as activists or leaders. Um,
Yeah, and that's absolutely the role I think we play.
mhm,
I consider myself a bit of a social activist, but, again, like you said, the work starts here, that I can't see the world as broken, because if I see it as broken, then
mhm,
that's the energy that I'm putting into consciousness, which expands the problem. So I have to begin to see that everything is actually in divine right order.
mhm,
And then from there, I take my steps going, what is mine to do? What
mhm,
can I do now? And it might be a Sunday message. It might be, you know, it could be a lot of different things. Well, we're just getting started here, and it's time for a commercial break. So we will be back in just a minute. You're watching Spirit Cafe show here on the New Thought Media Network, and we'll be back in just a moment. So don't go away.
I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Here and now I can see I was made beautifully. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Wish we'd all stop acting like we're strangers if we could see underneath. We are one family, and it don't matter where you come from. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one love. One love, one love. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one love.
Blessings, everybody. My name is Jafon Seeley. Could you imagine what is actually possible when we start honoring and recognizing our inherent worth, realizing that we are that which is assisting and co-creating our experience? And with that understanding, start recognizing that every human, every individual, everything that we interact with reflects that same inherent worth.
It's not about an adventure, it's about the atmosphere of the consciousness of adventure, the lifestyle of adventure. How many people would say that their lifestyle is adventurous?
My name is Lisa Benson. I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant and the author of Anchored in Bias, Fired Over White Tears. It's a book detailing my lived experiences with workplace bias and what fueled my passion for normalizing conversations about differences and creating safe spaces for everyone to bring the best version of themselves to life every day.
Welcome back to Spirit Cafe show. My guest today, Reverend Brenda Peters from Omaha, Nebraska. And we're talking about all kinds of good stuff. So let's talk about something else. How about transgender or gender fluidity or the LGBTQ plus? I don't know, where do we start with that? There's some confusion about gender identity and things, and it really does cause some challenges for some people as they try to not necessarily dismiss or discount, but to try to understand young people today or even older people today who are coming to terms with who they really believe themselves to be. What are your thoughts around that conversation?
Well, I mean, this is, again, I said it's an interesting period in time, and this is one of those that I'm happy about, that people are actually able to express how they feel and who they really you believe themselves to be, and who they really are. So this is a good thing. And as far as all the confusion, I think, again, it's our willingness. How willing are we to learn about something that we have no idea about? For those of us who, are cis, gender, um, and even the terms. And I can say myself, I am still in the learning process about all of this. Even with, I have a son who has a fiance, and I guess I don't even know if I call her fiance anymore, because they finally said my pronouns are they, them. And for the longest time, I have called her she. And I said, why didn't you tell me this before? Because, I felt bad. And see, there again, there's the guilt. I felt bad and ashamed, like I should have known, which I don't know how I would have known, because she didn't tell me. And so they didn't tell me. And this is the process that goes through my mind. I have to continuously slow down and really say they, them, or their name. and that's okay. If I can laugh at myself, and there are times when I mess up and I apologize, like I'm still getting used to this. So, please excuse me while I fumble my way through this.
You have a willingness, though, to fumble your way through it.
Absolutely.
I think that speaks volumes to people who are choosing to re-identify, sort of stepping out of the colonialism that says this, that, and the other thing, and into a place of being more human. When I think about the stories of Adam and Eve, now these are not two people who started the human race. This is the two aspects of our being. So I was explaining to somebody a while ago, and anybody who is using pronouns they, them, you may have a completely different understanding, but this is how I rationalized it with my sister-in-law, was to sit back and say, well, imagine for a moment that each one of us is both masculine and feminine. So that makes us they, them. It makes perfect sense. To sit back and go, well, I'm just one of them. Well, no, everybody has, aspects of themselves that are more, a combination of both. And whether it's in balance or not is irrelevant. So we've decided that you're a girl or a boy based on your sexual organs. Well, is that really accurate? I don't know. And so there's just a lot of questions. And I think, again, it's a willingness to strive to understand that we're all created unique and special. We've come into this life for who we really are. And so I changed my pronouns to she, they, just because of my own understanding of I'm both. So I identify mostly as she, but truly I know that I'm both. And so from that understanding, I changed it. And some people will look at that and go say, what? How does that make sense? Because they haven't been introduced to the concept, and don't really understand it. And I've had, parents come to me going, my child has, decided to wear a dress and I don't understand. And well, it's not your place to figure it out. It's your place to accept and love them and provide a container for them to just be who they are. And it's up to you to learn who they are.
Exactly. And that might change too,
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. I did see your pronouns, and I thought that's interesting. But then at the same time, I'm like, okay, that's what she wants to go by. And okay, that's fine. And that's the thing where it's like, if anyone can be open to just going, okay, I accept that, and not have a bunch of feelings, because truly my feelings about, anybody else's pronouns are null and void. I mean, it's their pronouns, and why am I having feelings about it?
Yeah, it's like deciding that, wait a minute, I don't like the name Brenda, or I don't like the name Barbara. So how dare you call yourself that?
Right.
You know? It's like we come up with these things that we feel strongly about sometimes, but the truth is it's ludicrous. I would
Yeah.
never question your name,
Right.
right?
Right.
So why would I question your pronoun?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I do, and okay, so to swing it though, I do on the other side understand the fear that some
Absolutely.
people have. And so, I don't discredit them and saying,
No,
your feelings aren't valid because you're uncomfortable. Again, you're uncomfortable with
comfortable.
this.
Yeah.
I see and hear your feelings, and, maybe we can have a conversation about that.
Let's have one of those courageous conversations.
Right. Like, I hear that you have fear, and I see that you have fear. Tell me more about what that might be about. And
Yeah.
some people don't even know that they have fear,
No, no.
about that. So
Yeah.
sometimes and I try very hard not to tell people how they're feeling.
Oh, no kidding, no kidding. Well, and it was interesting with my sister-in-law when we were having this conversation about they, them. She's like, "Well, that means more than one. Like, I don't understand. That doesn't make sense to me." And so it was even in that conversation that I thought about Adam and Eve. I hadn't put that together for myself as a way of explaining that, it's like I haven't defined myself as one or the other. I'm allowing for the possibility that I am more than the definition that would be assigned to girl or boy.
Mhm.
And so, it was interesting to have that conversation because it helped me to, better understand the whole concept.
Mhm.
And, we sometimes will get parents who find out their child is gay and they don't quite know what to do with that. And it's like, again, like Cheryl just said in the chat, exactly whose business are we in?
Mhm.
And the key is that I can only do for me, from me, as me. And if I just allow you to be you, then we can find a place to actually learn and discover and expand and come to know the world and how it works in a whole new way, because your perception of reality will be different than mine.
Mhm.
Although we seem to be on the same page for a lot of things, it's like, but we're still unique expressions of that divine mystery that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's again interesting, and I was very happy that my son's partner was able to come out to me.
Yes.
They haven't even done that with their parents, and that to me is part of that. What is mine to do? Well, it's mine to learn and mine
Mhm.
to grow, and then also mine to be open, so that others will
Right.
be able to feel comfortable to be able to come out and say, here,
This is me.
this is me, and I okay, thank you. At least now I can
Yeah.
use the right pronouns, hopefully.
Yeah. And to be willing to fumble, be
Right.
willing to just be in that space of I love you and
Mm,
I'm learning, and I'm
yes.
and then taking the time to, read things or to, attend webinars or go to Pride or, whatever it takes to try to shift the paradigm that you're currently living in to expand it to a place of greater acceptance of the world around us. Because everybody has value, everybody's feelings are valid,
Right.
and creating a space where it's okay for each person to express their uniqueness, I think is beautiful.
Absolutely. And I feel strongly that if especially somebody in our community, if they don't want to be known as a transgender, then I'm not going to, that's not my business. Like Cheryl said,
Nope.
that's not my business,
Yeah,
if you want to tell people, then you're more than happy to do that. But
yeah,
that's not mine to tell.
yeah,
And you let me know what pronouns you want to be used, and I'll use them. And I have to say also, um, with my son's partner, she is very gracious in allowing me to, fumble
right.
and make mistakes. There is, she, uh,
They,
they, see, they are very to let me fumble and make mistakes and just
yeah,
and go, I understand. I get
yeah,
it, and it's okay. It's okay. I get it that you're learning. Now,
that's it.
will they be like that in a year from now? And I don't know, but hopefully by a year from now, I'll be able to get this through my brain.
You'll have it. I think when people see us making the attempt to understand
Hmm.
and to respect the choice, I think that's really all it takes for someone to go, yes, I can cut you some slack when you slip up. I
Right.
know you're not giving me a dig or ignoring my desires.
Mhm.
You just slip back into that paradigm that's been a lifelong learned process,
Right.
right? And now you get to be, somewhere else and you're learning something new. And I think people are okay when we're learning something new and they can see that we're actually putting in the effort
Hmm.
to do better so that we can respect. I think most of us know when we're being disrespected.
Right. Absolutely. And again, back to, you know, having courageous conversations like that. If someone sees that you are trying to understand, they are more gracious and they are more in a place of, um, and you said not teaching, but sharing their experience,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
their hope about how they hope things will change, or
Mhm.
they won't have that experience again.
Yeah.
And then to be an ally to them.
Well, that's an important role as being an ally.
Hmm.
I think
Absolutely.
that for me is important in everything I do is to try to do whatever I can from where I am to number one understand myself enough to acknowledge when I feel uncomfortable. And when I feel uncomfortable, instead of trying to push that away, sort of dropping my awareness into it so I can be in the discomfort and put a name to it or a voice to it so that I can start to shift that.
Mhm.
Because whenever something new comes along, like with your son's uh,
Partner.
partner, it's like we're learning new words and we're
Hmm.
learning a new way. We're sort of taking the colonialism and we're breaking it apart and breaking it down to allow space for more unique and natural expression.
Hmm.
And I think that's a really good thing. And it's going to create discomfort in us at different times in different ways. And a willingness to sit in the discomfort and go, wow, I'm really uncomfortable right now. um, let's explore it and start with yourself to go, why do I feel so uncomfortable? And often it's just change or newness, a lack of understanding. So,
Hmm.
of course, educating ourselves is so crucial.
Hmm. Yeah. And if you don't step up, I mean, I think all of what is ours to do is, if you feel like you want to have a conversation with someone, if you back down from that and not have that conversation, that's a part of your growing.
Mhm.
And you've just said no to growing in
Yeah.
one sense or another. Um, and a lot of times I know that that's because of fear.
Yes.
You don't want to, offend them, which is valid.
Yeah.
But again, if you started off in the right context, then hopefully that wouldn't happen. Um,
Exactly. It wouldn't be offensive.
Right.
It would
But
be a
just
desire.
to, yeah, and just to back away from it just because of your fear or of what might happen or your uncomfortability or whatever it might be is, I think it's detrimental to our growth. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it harms on both sides of the fence, right?
Right.
Yes. And we miss an opportunity
Mhm.
to really get to know somebody
Mhm.
in a way that we might not have otherwise. And that for me is kind of the hardest place to be, is because I'm afraid I'm going to step in it. I miss out on finding out who you are,
Mhm.
which is my loss, right? So,
Right.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
you might, miss out on gaining a friend and having a friendship that could grow
so
you even more than what you ever thought before. Um,
absolutely,
yeah.
yeah,
I I know that when I was young, I gravitated towards interesting people, and a lot of times they were people that were not like me. You know, I remember a gal in college when I went to college. She was from Africa, and I just loved, she could speak Bushman, and I loved to hear her talk, and I was like, "I need you to teach me this." Not that I would ever use it, I mean, maybe I would, but, um, I was always on her, like, "Teach me, and I'll teach you," although she could speak English probably far better than me, but and she was just a lovely person, and,
yeah,
that's something that I had no, there was none of this, "Oh gosh, I'm gonna say something wrong, and, I'm gonna offend her, and I can't be friends with her." There was none of that. There was
yeah,
just true, genuine, heartfelt friendship, and,
yeah.
the fact that I still remember her, I mean,
She's a standout.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So,
Yeah, my eldest daughter came to visit me in the spring, and she took my great grandson to the park, and they were playing. And he started playing with a little girl, and so she sat down beside the mom and started chatting with the mom. And the mom was in a full hijab, and she said to Arlene, she goes, "Nobody ever comes up and speaks to me. Thank you."
mm,
And it's like we because we don't maybe understand that style of dress, again, we might pull back rather than meeting somebody where they are, and sort of going, wow, I met a new friend. Like Arlene was thrilled. This woman was beautiful, lovely, wonderful. They had a great conversation. Their kids played together so well, and there was just a real beautiful interaction that would not have happened
mhm,
normally, because like this woman said, so many people don't even approach her
mhm,
because of the hijab. And it's like, that's, again, a place where, we don't understand, or we don't know, or we've made assumptions.
mhm.
And I think assumptions can be deadly.
Oh, absolutely. You know what they say.
I do, I
I won't
do.
say it, but
I know exactly.
but
Yeah.
yeah, and, and expectations. A lot of
Expectations.
people have expectations of what would happen, or, we love to make stories up in our heads.
Oh
Um,
my gosh, do we ever? Uh, I remember when I was pregnant with my youngest, so this is going back quite a ways. She's now 18. But we were having an ultrasound, and the woman who was doing the ultrasound was Muslim, and wearing her headscarf, and so I felt kind of reserved, and like, what do I say? And so she's doing the ultrasound, and she's laughing and carrying on. And we got a video of it, and she, wrote on there, "Hi." And then, as if the baby's talking.
yes.
When it's done, bye. And she said, "Now, do you want to know the gender?" It's like, no, 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 no. Don't tell us that. But it's for me, it was my first conversation with a Muslim woman,
Mhm,
and it was so positive and so beautiful. And I was like, wow, I learned something new today, that because our religions are different, doesn't mean that's a barrier to a conversation.
Right.
And I think sometimes we think that as well. Like
Right.
my religion's the right one, so I don't know what we think, or we don't understand the other religions, so we don't know how to, but we can learn, right?
Yes.
Questions, read books.
Yeah. And that's one thing this year. Every month I've had a leader or someone who's very knowledgeable in a different faith come and speak at our church.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
we've had a Buddhist, we've had Islam, we've had Judaism. We've also had, well, I'm trying to get Christian Science.
Yeah,
I have a Wiccan coming. So, and we've had pagan. Um,
love
so,
it.
and we're gonna also have indigenous people. So
Good.
it's been, I mean, everybody's loved it and they've learned too.
Mhm.
I can't wait for the Wiccan speaker to come because I think that's one of the biggest, like, in a
And
church.
it's so similar to what we do.
I know. And that's the other thing. Like I point out, listen for the similarities, not the differences.
Yeah,
Listen for that,
yeah.
and you in everyone, and not to say that they're like us in any way. No, there
No,
are differences, but there's also a place of contact where we can connect with them. And that
absolutely.
breaks down that wall of you're different than me, so I can't talk to you. I can't relate to you. I don't understand you. It's like instead of, oh, hey, I would really like to talk and learn more about your
Absolutely.
faith.
Yeah, which is beautiful. I love that. Well, we're coming up to the end of our show already, if you can believe it. It goes so fast. And so, what in closing would be a final thing that you would like to, really just have people walk away with? What's one really great nugget?
I think the biggest thing is, to be willing. And if you don't have that conversation, you might regret it.
I love that. I love that. And thank you for sharing about having the different religions come and speak
Mm-hmm.
at your church. I love that. I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm going to do that with my congregation, is to have different people come in and share different ideas, because it really does help us to bridge,
Mm-hmm.
the divide, right?
Yes.
Being in that place where we welcome all people. There's a Unity Church in San Diego, and I was there many, many, many years ago, and they had painted on the wall, one God, many paths. And that to me really spoke to what it is we teach, what it is we believe. And if we believe that, then all religion can be a pathway to that greatest possible personal expression. So for me, that's a really important piece of the puzzle, is
Mm-hmm.
just to honor everybody wherever they are.
Right.
Brenda, you are a treat.
Oh, I thank you. I'm honored to be here. So thank you so much for
Oh,
inviting me. It was fun.
yeah, well, I'm so glad you're here. And I'm going to send you a note, because I do another show called The Joy Show. And joy is an acronym for just one you. And so I just talk to people about their journey and their path and how they got to where they are and all that kind of good stuff. And it always creates a really interesting conversation. So
Nice.
I will be in touch with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
And for everybody who's watching today or who watches later on in the week, just know that you are created unique and special, just like everybody else. And allow yourself to be vulnerable, to be open, to be receptive, and have those conversations that might feel a little bit difficult. And say hello to a stranger and give them a smile. Love you all. You're watching the New Thought Media Network. This is Spirit Cafe, and we are so grateful you joined in. See you next time. Bye for now.